everyone, welcome back to the channel. In this video we are diving into one of the most important and powerful feature of Databricks, delta sharing. So imagine sharing a live delta table from your Databricks workspace to anyone, even if they don't use Databricks, right? Still we can share our data from our Databricks to basically anyone. We are going to see exactly how to do that in this video, and this is called open sharing. So let's quickly jump into it. Okay, so this is our Databricks workspace. So we go to here catalog. If we go to catalog, then here we see delta sharing. So let's click on this delta sharing. Okay, so what do we see here? Missing organization name. Add an organization name to your workspace to enhance the data sharing. So let's go ahead and add this organization name here. I think this is important for several reasons. For example, for clarity or maybe trust, right? And so for example, like when you share data externally via delta sharing, the recipient needs to know, right, who is sharing the data. So a clear organization name provides this context, gives you a trust, like where the data is coming from, right? It also can be helpful for auditing. So these are some of the benefits. So let's go ahead and add the organization name. So we can simply say, okay, so save. So now if we see here, we have these options: shared with me, shared by me. Okay, and if we go to shared with me, nothing is shared with us, right? Then we have in shared by me, we have different options. We have the share, we have the recipients, and we can see here shared data and new recipient. So one way is like we can create new share and recipient from the UI. Another way is we can do it through our notebook. So let's first start doing it from our notebook, and then maybe later we can also see it from our UI. Okay, so for that, if we want to share something, then we need some data, right? So let's go to our workspace, create a notebook, and let's start creating some data or tables, right? So, and before that we need a cluster. So let's go ahead and attach a cluster here. So if I go to compute, we have this cluster. So we can simply start this cluster, right? So let's start this cluster. Okay, so let's go back to our this one. So now our cluster is ready, and here if we see our current catalog and current schema, so this is our current catalog and default schema. So let's first create another schema here. So if we go here, we have this default schema. Inside this there is no table, right? So but we don't want to work on this default, so let's create another schema. So I will create schema, my managed schema here. Okay, so now if we go here, we have this schema here. Okay, so I have to do use schema, and then here we see my managed schema. Okay, and if we see describe catalog, just to refresh, our storage root is this one, right? So all our data will go into this S3 bucket, right? This is our actual storage location, right? Okay, so now let's create a table inside this schema, right? So create or replace table, we are creating this sales data table, just few columns: ID, product name, quantity, price, sales data, right, using delta. So let's create this one. Okay, so if we see here, if we refresh, then we will see my sales data table is available here. And if you remember, this is how we did in our Unity catalog demo session, right? So this is how we were creating the table and schema in our Unity catalog, right? So this is one of the prerequisite for delta sharing. Your table and data should be in the Unity catalog. Okay, so we created this delta table here, right? And this is the table which we want to share. Okay, so if I do select here, nothing is there. So let's insert some data here. Okay, so this is the data. So we have created our delta table. So your table has to be a delta table, and your workspace should be Unity catalog enabled, right? Then only we can do delta sharing. Okay, so now we want to basically share this right? We want to send this or share this table with anybody, right, outside our organization, right? So the logical thing would be like we want to create a share, right? Because you want to share something, so we have to first create a share. Okay, so let's go ahead and create a share. So it's simple, create share, and let's give this name my sales share. Okay, so let's run this. Okay, so we have this share name, owner is this one, created at, created by. So these are few information which we can see here. Okay, so now let's go to our catalog once, and if we go to delta sharing, shared by me, and inside this share now we see this my sales share, right? My sales share that which we have just created. Okay, if we click here, so there is no recipient here, right? But we can add a recipient, right? And add assets also we can do. Okay, so let's go back again here to our data here. Okay, so now we see one share is available. Okay, so now what we have to do, we have to in so right now our share is empty, right? So we want to uh, add something into our that share folder which we have just created, right? So for that it's simple, we can do alter share my sales share, right? And we want to add table, right? So we will add this table. Okay, dot sales data. Okay, so this was our table, sales data. So we are adding a table to our share. Okay, so we see this error. Let's see what is this exception we are getting. So here it says unity catalog service exception, request id is this one, error class invalid parameter value, ds unsupported delta table feature, table features delta dot enable deletion vectors are found in table. Okay, so table feature, this feature are found in table, full history shared is false, table with deletion vector needs to be shared with full history. If you are okay, run this table, share the table in UI or with SQL command with history. Okay, so what it is telling basically is that when we created this table, so it is saying my this feature delta dot enable deletion vector, it is enabled, right, are found in this table. So what is this? This is basically a feature in delta lake table. So when it is enabled, it stores the information about the deleted rows more efficiently, basically, right, using this deletion vector. So what it does, instead of like physically rewriting the file for every delete operation, it is basically handling it performance wise, it is handling it even in a better way, and it will just store information about the deleted rows. Okay, rather than physically rewriting the files. So it is, you can say, one of the optimization things in your delete operation. And here it says full history shared is false. So when basically when we write this one, right, when we wrote this command, we are basically sharing only the current state of the table. Okay, so the recipient will see just the latest version of the data, right? So that's why it is kind of conflicting, because it says your delta enable deletion vector is enabled, okay, but your full history shared is false. So there is kind of a conflict. So it is saying like if you want to share, you can basically use with history command. So when you share a table with history, okay, then you are basically telling your delta sharing to provide access to the table's full transaction log. Okay, not just the current state but the whole transaction log. So this will allow the recipient to not only like query the latest version, but they can also query the past version of the table, which is nothing but your time travel, right? And they can see how the tables has evolved over time. Okay, so by sharing with history, you provide the necessary metadata and log entries for the recipient to correctly apply deletion vector and reconstruct the current or any historical state of the data, right? How we did it in time travel. So as it's suggesting, so alter share name, add table with history. So let's run it with history. So now let's see. Unauthorized access, permission denied to share this data. Basically, please grant yourself use catalog, use schema privilege. Okay, so looks like this privilege was not assigned. Okay, so let's go to catalog, and inside this catalog we have this catalog, right? And here we have this permission, use grant option. So what is our, so we will choose this principal. So we want to grant permission to this Gmail. We will say use catalog, use schema, and then grant. Okay, so we have now these two, and then we again go to here. Let's run this. Okay, so now we have our share, and we also have our data in the share, right? So now we have to create a recipient, right? So recipient is basically who you want to share your data with, right? External entity or any user, right? So let's create a recipient. Create recipient. So maybe we can give any recipient name, right? Because so external customer. Okay, so let's create this recipient. Unauthorized access, external delta sharing is not enabled on the metastore. Please contact the account admin to enable external delta sharing. So what does this mean? External delta sharing is not enabled on your metastore. Okay, so if we go here, we will go to manage our account. We have this workspace and we have this metastore, right? So we are right now here in this metastore, and here you see delta sharing, allow delta sharing with parties outside your organization. This is not enabled, so we have to enable this. Okay, and when we click there, we see these options: enable delta sharing allow Databricks user to share data outside organization. Okay, token lifetime. So basically a token gets generated when we want to share our data to outside organization. Okay, so it says token lifetime determines how long a generated token is valid for. If disabled, token are valid indefinitely. Recipient token lifetime, set expiry date is 90 days. Okay, so we don't want to have a 90-day expiry date, right? So we just want to have 1 day. Okay, by default it is 90 days. Okay, so in 1 day it will be expired. Organization name is optional, right? Enter the organization name. The UUID will be used by default if no name is entered. Okay, so we can have this one. Now we enable it. So this is enabled for our data sharing. Now we again come back here and we try to create a recipient. Okay, so now our recipient got created, right? And here what we see: recipient name external customer, authentication type is token, because whenever there is an external, you want to basically share your data externally, you do it through token. Okay, so this is the owner, created by, created at, comment, property, Databricks name external customer, active token ID. So this is the token ID, token link. So this is very important. So we have this activation link here, right? So and now what we have to do, basically we have to share this activation link to our external customer. Okay, and there is another way to get the activation URL also. If we do describe recipient external customer, so we will see again the same kind of thing. Okay, and now what we have to do, so this is our activation URL. Okay, and now share this activation URL. We have to share this activation URL securely with our recipient. Okay, so what they will do, they will copy this, and this has to be like, you have to send them securely, okay, because this contains your access to the data, right? So what they will do, they will go here, they will basically paste that URL, and they will see something like this one. Okay, you have been given access to a data set through delta sharing. The credential file can only be downloaded once, so don't lose it. So this we can download only once, so this you have to keep in mind. So let's download. So this is happening on the recipient side, so because we are sharing that URL to the recipient, and then recipient will download this credential file. Okay, and here we see it is downloading a config.share, right? So it is downloading a .share file. Okay, so let's wait for it to download. And here it say, do you want to allow downloads? Yes, allow it. Okay, so we downloaded the .share file. Okay, now client has that .share file. Okay, so they will use that in order to access the data. Its content would something be like this one. It would be like share credential version, endpoint, and then the bearer token. Okay, so it is used to access data shared via Databricks delta sharing. Okay, so this share, we have this share credential version. Okay, so indicates the version of the credential file format, right? Currently just the value 1, because yeah, standard version. And then we have this endpoint. So this endpoint is basically a URL, right? So the URL of the delta sharing server endpoint from which you can access the shared data. Okay, so this is where your client will connect to request data. It usually includes like the Databricks account ID, yeah, as part of the URL. Okay, and then we have this bearer token. So this is basically a secure time limited token, okay, that authenticates you to the delta sharing server. Okay, so this token grants access to the shared data, and this should be kept like confidential. Okay, so you save this .share file locally, and when you use a delta sharing client, you provide the path basically to this authenticate and connect to the sharing delta endpoint. Okay, okay, now what we have to do, the next step. So the recipient now can use a delta sharing client library to read the data. Okay, so there is one option of using PySpark. They can also use pandas. So let's read that file from PySpark. So we will do from delta sharing, we will import sharing client. Okay, so let's see. So we have to make sure to change this to Python, right? So we run again, and then we see we can install. Okay, and then now let's try. Okay, so we have imported this sharing client. Okay, and now we have to give the path of our config which we have downloaded, right? So config, we can file path. So what we can do, we can upload our .share file to dbfs, and we can read it from there. Okay, so let's do this new upload data, upload file to dbfs, and basically here we can drop our file, and file store table, I think this is where we will keep our file. Create table in notebook. So this is our file location. So this is where we are basically keeping our share file. So now what we have to do, we have basically we can do client sharing client, and then we have this config file path. Okay, so I have to give this dbfs also here, and then we get able to now read the file. So at this line, what we are doing, we are basically creating an instance of the delta sharing python client, okay, which is basically used to securely connect to a delta sharing server and access data which is being shared. Okay, so this is your config file path, right, and where your credentials are, right, because inside this file contains the authentication information, right, which we saw here. The authentication information is here, the endpoint url of the delta sharing server and the bearer token, right. So and this sharing client, it basically reads this file and uses the credential inside to establish the connection to the delta sharing server. Okay, so once the client is created, we can now list all the share and tables inside that. Okay, so here we are just creating a instance of the delta sharing python client. Okay, so now let's go ahead and see what is inside, uh, like what are the different shares which is being shared to us. Okay, so what we can do, we can do client dot list shares. Okay, and so we can make it in all shares, and basically we can, let's see this one. So it did not return anything, right? So why? Because we did not grant this share permission with our client, right? Because here we, what we did, we created the recipient, we altered the share, we added our table, we created the recipient basically, and we shared this, right? But we did not grant the share access to this recipient. We can also go here and see, we will go to catalog, delta sharing, shared by me. Okay, so we have this external customer. Okay, so here we see it is token authenticated, right, external customer, but there is no data here, but we don't see anything here, right? We have this grant share option, so we have to go here, so we have to grant this my sales share here, then only they can see. Okay, but let's do that through our SQL command, and if we go here, my sales share, we have this, inside this share we have this managed sales table, right? So we come here. Okay, so now we know that the grant, we have to grant that share, grant select on share. So what is our share name? My sales share, right? So our share name is my sales share. Okay, to recipient, we want to grant this to recipient external customer. Okay, so now if we run this, it's now says okay. So now if we run this one, so we see this, share, right? Share name is equal to my sales share. So I'm doing all these steps and mistakes because just I want to show you everything, okay? Because then only by getting all the errors only we will figure out okay what we have to do, okay? But if I would have shown you already like okay we need to grant this share access, then you might have forgot, right? So what we can do now, we have this share. Now we have to read the basically the table, right? So we can say our share name. So our share name is my sales share, right? Okay, and let's change this to Python. Okay, we can do all, get all the tables, all tables, okay? And inside this tables in share, we can basically see all tables if my t dot share is equal to share name, okay? And what we can print it, t dot name in for t in tables share, okay? So okay, tables in my share is sales data, right? To read this table we have to basically create this full URL for this table. So what happens here, so we have to give a profile file, okay? So here is our config.share file, and we are saying that okay this is my share, this is my schema, and this is my table name, okay? And we are basically creating a table URL. We are providing this file, right? Profile, this share file, then hash share name, schema, and table, okay? And so internally what is happening, so when you use this URL with uh, delta sharing client, okay, so the client read your credential from the profile file, okay? It connects to the delta sharing endpoint specified in the credential, right? And then it authenticates using your bearer token, and then requests the specific share schema and table you identified in the URL, okay? And it downloads and loads the data for you. So let's create this table URL. So this is my table URL, okay? So now basically what we can do, we can simply read this. Okay, so here we can able to now read the data from which was shared with us, okay? Yeah, and just remember to use like this. So what happened here, you have basically shared your data with an external user and they can now read the data, right? And you can do this some transformation basically now, so there no copy has been created, it's the live data which is being shared, okay, with the client. So that was using your PySpark. You can use pandas as well. So this is how you share your data with the external client, okay? And here if you remember, we did this with history, right? But if you don't want to share this with history, what you can do, basically you can create a table and you can disable that feature, right? And by the way, we are saying this because I already ran it once, so if you run it again you will see this error, right? Already exist, resource already exist, right? If you run like this same thing 2 times, so nothing to worry about. Okay, so now we want to share it, just to see an example how to create a table without sharing the history. So we will just share the current context, right? So what we will do, we will create another table. By the way, if we go to our catalog, delta sharing, okay, shared by me, so we have this one and we have this recipient. So my sales share, this is the share which is being shared by us to this recipient through token, right? And which will expire, created on this one, and token expiry is this one. So there is an option to rotate and update the token as well when it is expired, so that for example after expiry their client still has to access this data or read the data. They can request a rotate token, so new token will be generated. Through this token the client can able to access the data, right? And once the token is expired, they have the ability to and they have an option to rotate and get another token as well. Okay, if we again go to our workspace, okay, so now we want to create a table without history, right? So what we can do, we can create another table. So we can say without history. Okay, so we create, maybe just take only two using delta, and we will put a table property, enable deletion vector false, because this was the problem which we were getting right initially. So let's create our table again inside this one. Okay, so if we come here, we have now inside this without history. Okay, so let's try to do the next step what we did. So we want to alter share add table this, right? Okay, now we could able to do that. So with this we are sharing the current state of the table. Okay, and now if we again run this, so let's see if we again, so all the share, we have this one share, and now if we see all the tables here, let's see if we see, yes, we can see the second table which was shared. And basically what we can do, we can create this table URL again, and this time our table name is this one. So we will create this and we will read. Because we did not write anything, but we could able to, yeah, read this table. So yeah, this was your delta sharing with an external client. It is not required for the client to be on the Databricks, right? It so they can basically read your data through that token, and yeah, through pandas and PySpark they can basically read your data, right? So now with this you have shared your data with an external client. Here the data is live, it is not a snapshot. Okay, and with this we can also like provide real-time data to BI tools outside your Databricks. Okay, so that is open delta sharing. Okay, so I hope you understood this concept, and yeah, if you have any doubts, let me know in the comments. So now let's see what is Databricks to Databricks sharing. This is another type of delta sharing. Okay, so for that Databricks to Databricks sharing, so if you remember, we have created another meta store, right? And if we go here, so this was the meta store which we created before, right? So let's open this. So right, so this was your, if we go to catalog, then this was the another recipient. So this was one workspace which we created before, right? And so we are going to, what we are going to do, we are going to basically share our data from this catalog. Okay, so right now from this workspace, the AI to Deutsch Labs, to this workspace, to another DBR recipient. Okay, so for that we will go to catalog, and then here we go to delta sharing. So here we see first of all missing organization name, so let's give an organization name, another. Okay, see. And here this is basically what you're seeing is automatically created public sample shares that Databricks makes available by default, okay, to all the Unity Catalog meta store, and mainly for demo and testing purpose. If we go inside, Databricks automatically grants access to certain public shares. In order to work with this or see tables or volume, whatever data is shared with you, we have to create a catalog. So once you create a catalog, you could able to access the data which is inside this share. So now let's go back to here catalog, okay, and then we come here delta shared with me, okay. So right now there is nothing else, right? So we come back here, and now let's try to create a recipient, because if we go to catalog here, delta sharing, shared by me recipient, we have this external customer which we have created, right? Here it says expired because if you remember, we have created a token only valid for certain time, right? So it got expired. If I open this, then it says, yeah, authentication is expired. Okay, so if you want to generate a new token, for example, client or the recipient is your external customer is saying, I still want to share this data, then you basically click on this rotate, and then you get a activation link, you copy, and then you download this activation link, and then you get all the bearer token and those .share file, and through that share file you can again get access to this, okay. So, and here authentication type is token, right? So now we want to create another recipient, and our authentication type this time will not be token, because token is appearing only if you are sharing any data with an external client, external recipient who is not on Databricks, okay. So for this one, what we have to do, and by the way, there is some prerequisite also. So both the workspace for Databricks to Databricks sharing, both workspace should be Unity catalog enabled, okay. In our case it is, and both workspace should have an organization name, I mean it's recommended, and both workspace should have their own meta store, so which also we have, right? Because this is our one workspace which is in EU Central 1, another workspace in EU West 3, okay. So now let's go back and create a recipient, right? Create a recipient, let's say another. Now this time we will give an ID, and if you remember above, we just did create recipient and name of the recipient, but now because this was an open delta sharing, right? But now we have to provide an ID uh, for our another Databricks recipient. So what is this ID? This is your recipient meta store ID. So we are here in this, and then if we go to workspace, we do a create a notebook. So inside this compute, there is no cluster here, there is this by default, this one. So what we can do, we can just simply create a cluster and get the meta store, okay. So what we can do, we can basically do select current meta store, okay. This will give us the meta store ID, but we need a cluster. So right now in our compute, I am creating this cluster, so we created this small cluster here. So let's wait for this to start. Okay, so our cluster is now ready. We can go to our notebook, we can connect this cluster. Okay, so let's run. Okay, so this is our metastore ID, so let's copy this. So we will use this ID here, okay. So we want to create a recipient using ID this one, okay. We can also write a comment here, another Databricks recipient. Okay, so we created this recipient, and now you see authentication type is Databricks, and if we go above here, our authentication type was token for external customer, right? We have to now select on our this share to recipient another recipient which we have just created. So let's go ahead and run this. It's okay. Now if we go to catalog, delta sharing shared by me recipient, now we have this another recipient, right? And now the authentication type is Databricks. Okay, so I hope this is making sense. So now on the recipient workspace, let's go to our recipient workspace and let's see if we can see anything here. So if we go to catalog, delta sharing, now here we see shared with me. This is our organization name which we selected before, and here is we see like, okay, somebody from this organization shared something, right? So if we click here, so this is my sales share. This is what we have just shared, right? Now what we can do, we have to basically create a catalog. Okay, so we can give a catalog name, sales catalog. Click configure to set up additional permission, workspace binding, and add meta configure catalog. Okay, so here we say access the user. Okay, workspace, all workspace have access. Owner is this one. We have this grant all account user browse. Okay, so next save. Okay, so here now we see this delta share received. Inside this delta share received, we see this my shared sales catalog, and inside this we have this information schema. Yes, and then this is our schema, right? My managed schema, and these are the two tables, right? So here we see my managed schema and these two system user. Yeah, this is automatically shared, and this is our schema, right, which we shared. And here we have these two tables, right? If we go to details, then name my schema, catalog name is this one. Yeah, all these details now. So now you can simply go and do the select. So in the sales data we see this. So now our data is shared. So yeah, that is your Databricks to Databricks sharing. So yeah, data stays in providers S3, so data is not never copied, right? So you are basically just sharing the data, but data stays in the providers S3 and recipient has read only access, right? If table updates on the provider side, recipient gets the latest data. Okay, so yeah, so I think this is very useful, Databricks to Databricks sharing, because it can be used in your company, maybe some central team providing data access to multiple teams. So in that case also you can use this delta sharing, right? So okay, so I think that is it for Databricks to Databricks sharing, and that is it for delta sharing. I hope now you have a basic idea about how you can share your data. If you guys have any doubts, let me know in the comment section. How did you like this video, and if you want me to change anything, I hope you guys are creating your own notes as well. And yeah, I think that's all for this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you. Bye.